Hi, everybody. Welcome to week 3. Let me go ahead and do my share screen. Oh, we are going to be talking about arguments. We're going to review from last time we met. This is argument basics. We're going to accept something, reject something, suspend judgment. An argument is attempt to conceive someone, possibly yourself, that particular claim called conclusion is true. The rest of the argument is a collection of claims called premises, which were given as reasons for believing the conclusion is true. The conclusion is sometimes called issues being debated. Argument basis is premises, acceptable, relevant, conclusion. About premises, they may be stated or unstated. The law of nature and moral law are one and the same. Human beings can understand the laws of nature. Human beings must follow the laws of nature. The human community is charged with the task of ordering its life according to the same kind of objective principles by which the cosmos itself is ordered. Adapted from American Soul by Jacob Needleman. About premises may be stated or unstated, may be dependent or independent. Dependent premises need at least one of these premises to provide support for a conclusion. Independent premises provide some support for argument's conclusion, whether or not the premises are present, given reasonable assumptions. They may be stated or unstated. They may be dependent or independent. In every free society, which the U.S. intends to be, there must be opposite parties and violent dissensions. Generally, one party must prevail over the others. A free society cannot be preserved if the parties do not commit remaining, and even if they don't prevail. So, durably free America must be both strong in dissent and commitment to preserve the Union. That's adopted by Thomas Jefferson. In every free society, there must be opposite parties and violent dissensions. A free society cannot be preserved if the parties do not commit remaining united. So a free America can be accepted in both strong dissent and commitment to preserve the Union. They may be stated or unstated. They may be dependent or independent. They may be dictated by leading words or phrases, indicator words. They may be stated or unstated. They may be dependent or independent. They may be dictated by lead-in words or phrases, since, for the reason that, for, in the view of, because is implied by, inasmuch of is given that, suppose that is followed from, and it follows is due to. It may be stated or unstated. It may be dependent or independent. It may be dictated by lead-in words or phrases. It may be support or explanation. It usually provides in supporting or explanatory paragraph or a more detailed discussion. It may be stated or unstated, it may be dependent or independent, it may be indicated by leading words or phrases, it may need support or explanation, it may be surrounded by irrelevances. It may be stated or unstated. The religious freedom is first freedom guaranteed in Bill of Rights. It's also a single most important reason why the earliest settlers and colonies left safety and relative comfort in their homes to start new lives here. The bedrock freedoms of American civilization will always need to be protected and interpreted in times. So we must still interpret and defend religious freedom. Maybe stated or unstated, maybe controversial. Madonna's production frequently contains religious themes and symbolism. Her work has been the topic of serious study by respected scholars of religion. So Madonna's work, even her highly sexual material, must be protected as religious expression by First Amendment. Maybe stated or unstated, maybe controversial, maybe indicated by lead-in words or phrases. Thus, so, hence, and ergo, therefore, accordingly, consequently, it follows that. This shows that, this implies that, this proves that, and suggests that. May be stated or unstated, may be controversial, may be indicated by lead-in words or phrases, must contain only terms found in the premises or equivalents. The prevalence of new terms and conclusion is strong evidence of unstated premises. Valid arguments. Argument is valid if it's impossible for premise to be true and conclusion is false. At the same time, otherwise is invalid. Strong and weak arguments. Invalid arguments are classified as a scale from strong to weak. An argument is strong if it's very unlikely for the premises to be true and conclusion false. At the same time, an argument is weak if it's likely the premises to be true and conclusion to be false. In any of these ways, the ways premises could be true. No, valid, every way the premises could be true. The conclusion is true. Yes, invalid, or very unlikely strong, or not likely weak. What are the claims in this? The Standard & Poor Index rose by 4% today. DICK has 2,000 in S&P Index Mutual Fund, so DICK's mutual fund went up to about $80 today. The Standard & Poor's Index rose from 4% today. DICK has about 2,000 in S&P Index Mutual Fund, so DICK's mutual fund account went up to $80 today. Premise 1, the S&P Index rose to 4% today. DICK has about 2,000 in S&P Index Mutual Fund. DICK's mutual fund account went up to about $80 today. The Standard & Poor's Index rose to 4% today, and DICK has about 2,000 in S&P Index Mutual Fund. So DICK's mutual fund account went to about $80 today. Is this a valid argument? Analysis here is a valid argument. It's possible for premises to be true and conclusion false. Whether it's a good argument depends on whether the premises are true. The premises are plausible. The premises are more plausible than the conclusion. The argument is valid or strong. What are the claims in this? Senora Vance is an economics professor. All economics professors are socialists, so Senora Vance is a socialist. Premise 1. Senora Vance is an economics professor. All economics professors are socialists. Senora Vance is a socialist. Is this a valid argument? Analysis. This is a valid argument. It is impossible for premises to be true and conclusion to be false. It is a good argument? No. The second premise is false. One way of conceptualizing arguments is the degree of confidence once supported to have a conclusion if premises are true. Deductive arguments are constructed with the intention of supporting their conclusions perfectly, that is, with premises that, if true, guarantee truth in the conclusion. Inductive arguments are constructed with the intention of providing the strongest possible support for the conclusion, even though they're unable to guarantee the truth of the conclusion. Why is this claim true? Explanations. An inferential explanation is a collection of claims that can be understood as something happened because of A, B, and C. We call A, B, and C the explanation. Something happened is the claim being explained. The claim is highly plausible. The explanation addresses the correct claim. The explanation is plausible. The explanation is valid and clear. The explanation is not circular. Argument basics. Getting to accept, reject, suspend judgment. Argument. An argument is an attempt to conceive someone, possibly yourself, that a particular claim called conclusion is true. The rest of the argument is a collection of claims called premises, which are given as reasons for believing the conclusion is true. The conclusion is sometimes called issues being debated. Argument basics, premises, acceptable, relevant, and conclusion. About premises, they may be stated or unstated. The laws of nature and moral laws are one and the same. Human beings can understand the laws of nature. Human beings must follow the laws of nature. So human community is charged with the task of ordering its life according to the same kind of objective principles by which cosmos itself is ordered. This is adapted from The American Soul by Jacob Needham. About premises, they may be stated or unstated. They may be independent or independent. Dependent premises need at least one of these premises to provide support for the conclusion. Independent premises provide some support for an argument's conclusion, whether or not the other premises are present, given reasonable assumptions. They may be stated or unstated. They may be dependent or independent. In every free society, which the U.S. intends to be, there is the opposite parties and violent dissensions. Generally, one party must prevail over the others. A free society cannot be preserved if the parties do not commit to the remaining united, even if they don't prevail. So, duly free America must include both strong dissent and commitment to preserve the Union. That's adapted by Thomas Jefferson. They may be stated or unstated. They may be dependent or independent. In every free society, there must be opposite parties and violent dissensions. A free society cannot be preserved if parties do not commit to remaining united. So, a free America can be expected to both strong dissent and commitment to preserve the Union. They may be stated or unstated. They may be dependent or independent. They may be indicated by lead-in words or phrases. Indicator words. They may be stated or unstated. They may be independent or dependent. They may be indicated by lead-in words or phrases. Since, for, because, inasmuch as, suppose that, it follows from. For reason that, in view of, this implied by, given that, it follows from, or due to. It may be stated or unstated, may be independent or independent, may be indicated by lead-in words or phrases, may need support or explanation. This is usually provided by a supporting or explanatory paragraph or a more detailed discussion. They may be surrounded by revelances. May be stated or unstated, religious freedoms is the first freedom guaranteed in the Bill of Rights. It's also the single most important reason why the earliest settlers and colonies left for safety and relative comfort of their homes to start new lives here. The bedrock freedoms of American civilization will always need to be protected and interpreted for time. So, we must still interpret and defend religious freedom. It may be stated or unstated, it may be controversial. Madonna's productions frequently contain religious themes and symbolism. Her work has been the topic of serious study by respected scholars of religion, so Madonna's work, even her highly sexual material, must be protected as religious expression by the First Amendment. It may be stated or unstated, remember, it may be controversial, and may be indicated by lead-in words or phrases. Once again, we have thus, therefore, this shows that, so accordingly, this implies that, hence, consequently, this proves that, it follows that, and it suggests that. Remember, it may be stated or unstated, it may be controversial, it may be indicated by lead-in words or phrases, and must contain 4 terms found in the premises or equivalents. The presence of new terms in conclusion is strong evidence of unstated premises. Valid arguments. An argument is valid if impossible for premises to be true and conclusion false. At the same time, otherwise it's invalid. Strong and weak arguments. Invalid arguments are classified on a scale from strong to weak. An argument is strong if it's unlikely for the premises to be true and conclusion to be false at the same time. An argument is weak if it's likely for the premise to be true and conclusion to be false. Ways premises can be true. No, valid. Every way the premises could be true. The conclusion is true. Yes, it's invalid. Very strongly unlikely, strong, or not likely, weak. The Standard & Poor's Index rose from 4% today. Dick has about 2,000 in S&P Index Mutual Fund, so Dick's mutual fund went up to about $80 today. Premise 1 is S&P Index rose to 4% today. Premise 2, Dick has about 2,000 as S&P Index Fund, and Dick's mutual fund went up to $8 today. So, back to this. The Standard & Poor's Index rose to 4% today. Dick has 2,000 in his S&P Index Mutual Fund, so Dick's mutual fund account went to $80 today. Is that a value argument? Looking this over again in analysis, it is a value argument. It's possible for the premise to be true and conclusion to be false. Whether it's a good argument depends on whether the premises are true. The premises are plausible. The premises are more plausible than the conclusion. The argument is strong or valid and strong. Senora Vez is an economics professor. All economics professors are socialists, so Senora is a socialist. And we can see that the premise, Senora Vez is an economics professor. Premise 2, all economics professors are socialists. And conclusion is Senora Vez is a socialist. So Senora Vez is an economics professor. All economics professors are socialist. So Senora Vez is a socialist. The valid argument, analysis, it's a valid argument. It's possible. So the premise is to be true and the conclusion to be false. Is it a good argument? No. The second premise is false. One way of conceptualizing arguments is by the degree of confidence one is supposed to have in the conclusion if the premises are true. That's how you can look at deductive and inductive arguments, which we talked about last week. Deductive arguments are constructed with intention of supporting their conclusion perfectly. That is with premises that, if true, guarantee truth of the conclusion. Inductive arguments are constructed with intention of providing the strongest possible support for the conclusion, even though they're unable to guarantee the truth of the conclusion. Why is this claim true? An inferential explanation is the collection of claims that can be understood as something that happened because of A, B, and C. We call A, B, and C the explanation. Something happened to the claim being explained. The claim is highly plausible. The explanation addresses the correct claim. The explanation is plausible, and the explanation is valid and strong. The explanation is not circular. And there you go. That's argument basics, getting to accept, reject, and suspend judgment. All right. Today we're going to be talking about our chapter 3, which is continuing the critical thinking topic. So, critical thinking means making reasoned judgment. According to Bayer, in 1995, using criteria to judge the quality of something, from a simple activity such as a normal daily activity to the conclusion of a research paper. Critical thinking is a disciplined manner of thought that a person uses to evaluate the validity of something, statement, new ideas, and research. Critical thinking is intellectually disciplined process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, evaluating information gathered from or generated by observation, experience, reflection, reasoning, or communication. Critical thinking directly influences the capacity for individuals to advance and effectively applying the information they have been exposed. It seems important for us not only to learn about thinking critically, but also to teach critical thinking to others as well. The connection of significantly for a person is to be successful in any field of living, he must have ability to think critically. He should be able to reason inductively and deductively, such as when criticizing or constructing ideas and solutions. These critical thinking abilities are generally recognized as important and persuasive, educational, objective, and are considered a desirable outcome of human activities. Looking at critical thinking theories, there's 3 perspectives here. The first one is a philosophical perspective, and it's in 1986, and Henry in 1991, and Garrison in 1992, Watson and Gazer in 1980, Perjourn in 1998, and Miser in 1990 have focused on the tensions upon the requirements of the formal logical systems of critical thinking. The theories represent the philosophical perspective of critical thinking. Critical thinking process, according to Ennis 1986 and Henry 1991 and Garrison 1992, they developed their theories of critical thinking as problem solving. The theories involve 4 stages. The process include focusing, observing a question or problem, asking and answering questions for clarification of the problem, making evaluating decisions and solutions, and deciding on action. The critical thinking disposition suggested by Ennis includes seeking a clear statement of the question, seeking reasons, trying to be well informed, and trying to remain relevant to the main point. Henry 1991 identifies 4 dimensions for analyzing problems, which are participative, social, interactive, cognitive, megacognitive. She thinks that critical thinking is a cognitive dimension. She suggests that the process of critical reasoning here by looking at elementary classification, interference, judgment, and strategies. As for Garrison 1992, critical thinkers move through 5 stages. Problem identifying, defining it clearly, exploring the problem and possible solutions, evaluating their adaptability, integrating understanding with existing knowledge. Comparison among critical thinking processes of Ennis, Henry, and Garrison. Ennis's categories of critical thinking abilities are elementary clarification, focusing on a question, analyzing arguments, asking and answering questions for clarification, basic support, judging the credibility of the source and observation reports. Interference, deducing and judging deductions, induction, making and judging value judgments, advanced classification, defining terms and judging definitions, identifying assumptions, strategy and tactics, deciding on action, interacting with others. We have Henry's critical stages, We have elementary classification, observing or studying a problem, identifying its elements, observing the linkages, in-depth clarification, analyzing a problem to understand the underlying values, beliefs, and assumptions. We have interference, admitting or proposing an idea based on the true propositions. Judgment, making decision, evaluations, and criticism. Strategies, application of solution, following a choice or a decision. Garrison's critical thinking stages, problem identification, triggering an event that arouses interest of a problem, problem definition, define problem boundaries, end and means, problem exploring, deep understanding of a situation or problem mitigation, evaluation of alternative solutions and new ideas, problem mitigation, acting upon understanding to validate knowledge. The composite of attitudes and knowledge and skills from philosophy perspective, Watson and Glaser, 1980, view critical thinking as a composite of attitudes, knowledge, and skills. The composite include attitudes of inquiry that involved an ability to recognize the existence of problems, B, knowledge of the nature of valid inferences, abstractions, and generalization, skills in employing and applying the above attitudes and knowledge. And then according to Watson and Glaser, competency in critical thinking is represented by certain critical thinking abilities, interference, the ability to discriminate among the degrees of truth, falsity of interferences. And interference is the conclusion that person must draw from certain observations or facts. Recognitions of assumptions, the ability to recognize assumptions. An assumption is something taken for granted. Deduction, the ability to determine whether certain conclusion necessary follow from information in given statement or premises. Interpretation, the ability to weigh evidence and come to generalization or conclusion logically follows beyond reasonable doubt of the given information. Evaluation of an argument, the ability to distinguish between arguments that are strong and relevant and those that are weak or irrelevant. The argument is strong if it is almost impossible for premises to be true and conclusion to be false. An argument is weak if it's likely that premises could be true and conclusion is false. The example of evaluation of argument premises, all cats like to eat fish and Garfield is a cat. Conclusion, Garfield likes to eat fish. Strong argument, it's possible for the premises to be true and conclusion to be false. Premises, Mr. Lim is a bachelor. Conclusion, Mr. Lim was never married. All bachelor are unmarried. Weak argument, Lim could have been divorced. It's likely that the premises could be true and the conclusion false. The critical thinking model, a model of critical thinking skills, there are 6 core critical thinking skills. Number 1 is interpretation. Interpret is comprehend and express meaning, significance of a wide variety of experiences, situations, data, events, judgments, conventions, beliefs, rules, procedures, or criteria. Interpretation includes sub-skills of categorization, decoding significance, and clarifying meaning. Analysis to identify the actual relationships among statements, questions, concepts, descriptions, and other forms of representation. This is intended to express belief, judgment, experiences, reasons, information, and opinions. It includes examining ideas, detecting arguments, and analyzing arguments as sub-skills of analysis, identifying similarities and differences between 2 approaches to the solution of a given problem. Evaluation means to assess the credibility of statements of other representations, which are accounts, descriptions of person's perception, experiences, situation, judgment, belief, or opinion, to assess the logical strength of the actual intended inferential relationships among statements, descriptions, and questions, and other forms of representation. Comparing the strength and weakness of alternative interpretations. Interference. Interference means to identify and secure elements needed to draw reasonable conclusions to the form of conjecture and hypothesis, to consider relevant information, and to deduce the consequences flowing from data, statements, principles, evidence, judgments, beliefs, opinions, and concepts, descriptions, questions, other form of representations. And reading, identifying, securing information needed to formulate a synthesis of from multiple sources. Explanation can be defined as able to state the results of one's reasoning. It's to justify the reasons in the terms of evidential, conceptual, methodological, and conceptual considerations. The sub skills under explanation are stating results, justifying procedures, and presenting arguments. We have self-regulation. It means self-consciously to monitor one's cognitive activities. The elements used in these activities and results are deduced, particularly by applying skills in analysis and evaluation of one's own inferential judgments with a view toward questioning, confirming, validation, or correcting one's reasoning or one's results. The two sub-skills under self-regulation is self-examination and self-correction. And we can see three major features of the house of arguments. They are issue, reason, and conclusion. The author claims that the house provides a way to visualize an argument and help us see the argument more clearly. If the structure of a house is well supported, it is strong argument. It represents a well-constructed critical thinking characteristics. However, if reasons are weak, the house argument can collapse into a weak argument. The philosophical perspective. Steinberry, 1986, and Cohen, Freeman, and Wolf, 1996, are critical thinking experts who review critical thinking from the psychological perspective. According to Steinberg, critical thinking involves three kinds of thought. Meta-components. The meta-components include recognizing that problem exists, defining the nature of the problem, deciding on a set of steps for solving the problem, ordering the steps into a coherent strategy, deciding upon a form of mental representation for information, allocating one's time and resources in solving a problem, monitoring one's solution to a problem as problem is being solved, and utilizing feedback regarding problem solving after one's problem solving has been completed. Performance components. We have performance components. They're lower order, non-executive processes used to execute the instructions of the meta components and provide feedback to them. Performance components can be domain for performance, inductive reasoning, deductive reasoning, and spatial visualization. Knowledge acquisition. Knowledge acquisition components are the processes used to self-conceptualize information. Three components: selective encoding involves screening relevant from irrelevant information. Selective combination involves putting together the relevant information in consistent, organized way. Selective comparison involves relating old, previously known information to new information. The recognition and metacognition model, according to Cohen, Freeman, and Wolf, 1996, they must believe the order of critical thinking. One must have two prerequisite skills that refer to recognitional skill and metacognitive skill. Recognitionally skilled, they are able to recognize a large number of situations as familiar and retrieve an appropriate response. In these situations, critical thinkers act quickly and effectively in intuition. Recognition can fail or mid-leap, however, in unfamiliar, novel, uncertain situations. Critical thinkers must switch from intuition, right atmosphere function, to analysis, the left atmosphere function. They must break the problem down into components, make judgment, and put them back together again in a systematic formula that leads to an optimal solution. Metacognitively skilled. Metacognition is thinking about one's own thinking. Metacognition is being aware of one's thinking as one performs specific task and then using this awareness to control what he's doing. The process of critical thinking is about results of recognition that can be stopped anytime immediate action is taken the best solution. Recognitionable processing. When a problem is presented, in most situations, decisions are made by rapid recognitional processes. At this stage, in recognizing familiar situations, actions may be activated. If situations are unfamiliar, no immediate action would be taken, and one will wait and think more about the problem. Quick test is a control function that decides whether or not to act immediately on a recognitionable solution to think more. If the stakes are high, time is valuable, and the situation is unfamiliar, uncertain, and the initial recognition response may be inhibited, and a cycle of critical thinking begins. Critiquing and correcting. Critiquing and correcting process of critical thinking involves looking for qualitative appropriate ways. One may find gaps, not enough reason to choose one's conclusions, and the other conflict reasons to choose both conclusions, unreliable assumptions, reasons that depend on unexamined premises. The educational perspective. One of the most influential of the critical thinking models is Bloom's taxonomy of higher thinking. Bloom's taxonomy of higher thinking is critical thinking is synopsis with a high level of thinking, especially evaluation. The ability to evaluate is fundamental to critical thinking. The process involves evaluation of these ideas, solutions, arguments, and evidences. In Bloom's taxonomy of higher thinking, the evaluation skill is the highest level of thinking skills. Bloom's list of 6 levels of the simplest to the most complex level of critical thinking. The list begins with knowledge and moves on to comprehension. Application, analysis, synthesis, evaluation. Evaluation skill is the goal of learning and thinking process. Bloom's theory has been widely accepted and taught in thinking skills and the fields of education programs. The theory gives learners practice in some of the lower levels of critical thinking skills before moving them on to more difficult tasks or higher thinking processes. According to Bloom, one master in thinking can move from the next level or stage. The reason we cannot ask a person to evaluate if he does not know, does not understand, it cannot interpret, cannot apply, and cannot analyze it. 6 levels of Bloom's taxonomy: evaluation, judging and evaluating; synthesis, putting together; analysis, taking apart; application, making use of it; comprehension, interpreting and understanding; knowledge is remembering and retaining. The critical thinking Cynic model here is Zebra 2001 suggests the paradigm shift from traditional method is necessary in how we teach students. The shift involves the revised model, a new consequence of components that should be used to help engage biology. The model's educational model of critical thinking process. Each cycle of the model begins with a focus, careful observation of the problem, and question or hypothesis proposed. Next is data generating stage where new content is collected. Critical thinking Cynic model. Focus or observation, careful observation and engagement. We have decision, description of the solution, use public self-knowledge or evidence. We have analysis, deliberation component, weigh relative merits of content and value. We have question hypothesis, questioning how the problem can be solved, data generating, new content is collected. Critical thinking skills, the critical thinking abilities. And this critical thinking abilities identifies 12 abilities of critical thinking. These 12 abilities indicate ways of avoiding making a mistake while evaluating when selecting only right answer. By using the terms meaningful, clear, consistent, logical, premise, following the rules, accurate, justified, relevant, assumption, true, one can think more precisely and critically in evaluation process of the critical thinking. We have critical thinking abilities. We can ask some questions that are related, like grasping the meaning of a statement. Is it meaningful? Judging whether there is ambiguity in reasoning, is it clear? Judging whether statements contradict each other, is it consistent? Judging whether a conclusion follows necessary, is it logical? Judging whether a statement is specific enough, is it precise? Judging whether a statement applies to principle, is it following rule? Judging whether observation is reliable, is it accurate? Judging whether inductive conclusion is warranted, is it justified? Judging whether the problem has been identified, is it relevant? Judging whether something has an assumption, is it taken for granted? Judging whether a definition is adequate, is it well defined? Judging whether a statement is authority, is acceptable, is it true? Wade's critical thinking skills. Wade, 1995, observed critical thinking who are fair-minded. He identified 8 skills of critical thinking. Fair-minded critical thinking involves abilities of asking questions, defining the problem, examining evidence, analyzing assumptions and bias, avoiding emotional reasoning, avoiding oversimplification, considering other interpretations, and tolerating ambiguity. Wade's critical thinking skills: asking questions, defining a problem, examining evidence, avoiding oversymbolization, tolerating ambiguity, avoiding emotional reasoning, considering other interpretations, analyzing assumptions, and bias. Silverman and Smith's critical thinking abilities. According to Silverman and Smith, one demonstrates the ability to think critically by being able to analyze complex issues and make informed decisions, synthesize information in order to arrive to reasoned conclusions, evaluate the logic and validity and relevance of data, solve challenging problems, question the assumptions of those in authority, and conventional wisdom. Distinguish between observations and interference. Identify the assumptions of any argument and judge their validity. Identify the nature of reasoning being used. Know when inductive and deductive reasoning is required. Aspect of critical thinking disposition. Critical thinkers are open-minded, value fair-mindedness, respect evidence reasoning, clarity, precision, look at different points of view, and will change position when reason leads them to do so. Criteria. The conditions that must be met for something to be judged is as believable. Although the argument can be made that each subject area has different criteria, some standards apply for all subjects. An assertion must be based on relevant, accurate facts on credible sources, precise, unbiased, free from logical fallacies, logically consistent, and strongly reasoned. Argument is a statement or a proposition with identifying evidence. Critical thinking involves identifying, evaluating constructed arguments. Reasoning is the ability to infer a conclusion from one or multiple premises. To do so requires examining a logical relationship among statement data. Point of view. The way one views the world, which shapes one construction of meaning. In the search for understanding, critical thinkers view phenomena from different points of view. Procedural for applying. Critical thinking makes many procedures. These procedures include asking questions, making judgment, identifying assumptions. The theories of critical thinking manifest that critical thinking involves skills in analysis, interpretation, inference, explanation, and evaluation. It implies to promote and enhance critical thinking in learners. The style of passive teaching and learning must be shifted into active one. Besides, students encouraged to work with each other in small discussion groups after major points, demonstration during lectures. Students will be able to process new information, connect previously learned topics, and practice questions that promote further thinking. Strategies to promote critical thinking. We want to improve critical thinking. We want to build a house of argument. The process of building a house of argument can be used as an effective strategy to promote critical thinking. The process of critical thinking. The issue arises. The issue is statement of a problem. Whether you drive 120 kilometers per hour. Setup reasons. The stage involves information and reason collection. The reasons are claims to defend, to justify belief in a conclusion. The condition of your car is bad. The tires of the car are blown. You meet with an accident. Search for supporting evidence. 4 types of evidence: scientific, philosophical, statistical, and research. Statistics shows that there are more accidents, fatalities when people drive at above 120 kilometers per hour. Making conclusions. A conclusion is a decision that the thinker has about the issue. is often preceded by the words such as in conclusion or therefore. In process of drawing a conclusion, the ability to make inferences is important. Two factors are necessary for conclusion to be warranted. The reason must be true. The conclusion must follow from reasons. Therefore, you should try not to drive at or above 120 kilometers per hour. Recognizing assumptions. Assumptions lie beneath the argument and constitute the basement of the statement of the critical argument. The terms commonly used to express the assumptions are assumes, presume, and presupposes. I am assuming that, the presumption is that, the presupposition is that. We never want to assume anything. You know what they say. Explore implication. Implication is possible outcome that follows from an argument. For example, the conclusion that you should try not to drive at or above 120 miles per hour may cause attention discussion of people and the implications. Outcomes of these discussions may be favorable or unfavorable. When the implications are positive, they function as additional reasons for the argument. However, the implications are negative or unclear, they may be offered as a major reason for a counter-argument. Improve critical thinking through questioning. Critical thinking can be enhanced through critical reasoning. Critical questions excel the thoughtful wording and construction are the most likely to produce higher level thinking in students. Cooperative questioning process, learners can hear from other perspectives and analyze claims, evaluate evidence, and explain and justify the reasoning. The circle of cooperative questioning model. Introduction of general teaching learning goals. Teaching about 10 to 20 minutes. Current brain research suggests mental breaks every 20 minutes to help learners stay alert and on task. So we're going to take a 10-minute break after this PowerPoint series. And students work together to answer questions. A couple of students merge to discuss their answers. Reports of merged groups to report to class. Teachers report to process of another related topic. Critical questioning strategies. Examples of these strategies: taxonomy of Socratic questioning and Paul Elder's standards question. The taxonomy of Socratic questioning is to stimulate interaction between the teacher and the learner. Compromises 6 categories of Socratic questions. An example of taxonomy of Socratic questioning could be like this. Question of clarification. What do you mean by? What's your main point? Questions that probe assumptions. What are you assuming? What could we assume instead? Questioning that probe reasons of evidence. Do you have any evidence in that? 4. Questions of viewpoints or perspective. How can we find out? What does this question assume? Question that probe implications and consequences. What are you implying in that? Question about the question. Why is this question important? Then we have standard questions by Paul and Elder, 1999. They identified 8 standard questions students should learn in promoting critical thinking. Standard, clarify. Questions could be, could you elaborate that further? Would you illustrate what you mean? Accuracy, how could we check on that? How could we find out if that's true? Precision, could you be more specific? Could you give more details? Relevance, how does this relate to the problem? How does this bear the question? Depth, what factors make this a difficult problem? Breadth, do we need to consider another point of view? Logic, does all this make sense together? Significance, is this important problem to consider? Arrange classroom space to encourage interaction. Teachers should first create a comfortable environment for interaction and discussion. The classroom space should be designed to facilitate the activity of critical thinking. The arrangement of the classroom should also facilitate division of students into small groups or discussion problem-solving exercise. 4. Allow time for reflection or interaction. Students should allow a little time for reflection or interaction. Allowing silent time can promote and deepen the critical thought of students. Students need time to mull over and digest all the information, concepts, and methodologies being presented to them, and especially during periods of questioning. Begin class with a problem and finish class with a brief evaluate exercise. At the beginning of class, teachers can ask some questions on problem related to the topic of the day. At the end of the class, a brief evaluate exercise about the most important thing they learned should be done. In this way, students have more opportunities for critical thinking. And then you have blockages to critical thinking. Maybe you're unable to maintain critical thinking attitudes. To be critical thinking, one needs to have certain strong attitudes. A critical thinking attitude is a strong mental stance with a person approaches events and issues. Critical thinking is eliminated when a person approaches the events and issues. Critical thinking is eliminated when a person cannot struggle to maintain following attitudes: intellectual curiosity, open mindedness, strong sense of critical questioning and reasoning, strong personal experience. There's a tendency for a person to trust his own observation experiences when arguing, judging, evaluating ideas. The blockages can lead to bias when he's judging, evaluating solutions, ideas of a problem. To overcome this mental blockage when judging, evaluating ideas, one should not base decisions on only one experience, but refer to a few examples. The tendency of stereotypes is another blockage of critical thinking. A stereotype thinker approaches any topic with certain preliminary belief as habits of mind. When somebody stereotypes, he believes that particular group has specific set of characteristics. Example could be white people more intelligent than black people. Oversimplifying. Oversimplifying means failing to consider that there's other characteristics in addition to those that we're interested in, and they might affect the thoughts under observation. Most of us prefer simplicity to complexity. Decision and situation with simple answers permit us to move on rapidly and confidently to the next topic without investing much mental energy. Oversimplifying can limit our critical thinking. Whenever we fail to consider that there are other perspectives, we cut ourselves off from potential insights. And lastly, strong psychological needs. In arguing and evaluating ideas, one's actions may too often be guided by one psychological need. If certain things are true and good for a person, he or she feels better. For instance, when evaluating ideas of a problem, one may need certain conclusions to be true, then these conclusions may be wrong, but reflect the personal psychological needs. Because one wishes, certain conclusions may be true, and one may reason as they are true emotionally despite strong evidence to the contrary. All right, it's time for us to take a 10-minute break. Let me put my 10-minute timer on so that you know when you should come back. Oops. Oh, there you go. Okay. Oh, Okay. Right. Elder and Paul on critical thinking. What's critical thinking again? What keeps us from thinking critically? Remember, we just went over it. The benefits of critical thinking is the quality of life, and what we produce, make, build depends precisely on the quality of our thought. Shoddy thinking is costly both in money and the quality of our life. We want to do critical thinking standards. We want to have clarity, accuracy, relevance, logic, and we want to be fair. Clarity, we are confused when we are not clear. We are clear when we understand what we are saying, what we're hearing, and what we're reading. Questions you can ask when you want to be clear. You could say that in your words. You could explain what you mean. You could give an example. When we say what's true or correct, we're accurate. When we aren't sure about something is true, we check to see if it is. Questions you can ask to make sure you're accurate. How could we find out if it's really true? How can we check this? How can we test this idea to see if it's true? How do you know what you're saying is true? Thinking is logical when everything fits together. You can ask questions. You can ask when you're not sure whether something is logical. This doesn't make sense to me. Can you show me how it fits together? The sentence and paragraph doesn't seem to belong together. How can I rewrite it so sentences all fit together better? What you're saying doesn't sound logical. How did you come to your conclusion? Explain why that makes sense to you. Something is relevant. You have to be relevant. Something's relevant when it relates directly to the problem you're trying to solve, the question you're trying to answer, and whatever you're talking about or writing about. You can ask when you're not sure whether something is relevant. How does that say relate to the problem being addressed? How does information relate to the question you're asking? Something is significant when it focuses on what's important and not as trivial. You can ask when you're not sure whether something's significant. Which of these facts is most important? Is the most important problem to consider? Is the central idea to focus on? The elements of reasoning. All reasoning has purpose. All reasoning is an attempt to figure out something, to settle some question, or solve some problem. All reasoning is based on assumptions. All reasoning is done from some point of view. Elements of reasoning. All reasoning is based on information and evidence. All reasoning is expressed through, shaped by concepts and ideas. All reasoning contains inferences, interpretations, and conclusions. All reasoning leads somewhere or has implications and conclusions. Think about the purpose. Your purpose is a goal or what you're trying to make happen. Questions you can ask target purpose. What's the purpose of this assignment? What's the purpose in doing what I'm doing? What's my teacher's purpose? The question lays out a problem and guides our thinking. Questions you can ask about the question. What question am I trying to answer? What's the question we're trying to answer in this activity? Should I be asking a different question? Here's some assumptions or beliefs that you take for granted, but you don't question them, but you should. What am I taking for granted? Am I assuming something I shouldn't? What assumptions leading me to this conclusion? And there's information on the facts, the evidence, or experiences you use to figure things out. You're gathering the information. Here's some questions you can ask. What information do I have to answer this question? What information do I need to answer this question? You want to watch your inferences. Inferences are conclusions you might come to. It's what the mind does to figure things out. What conclusion am I coming to? Are there conclusions that I should consider? Concepts that you're thinking to understand what's going on. Questions you can ask to clarify concepts. What's the main idea? What idea am I using to my thinking? Is this idea causing problems for me and others? Understand your point of view. Questions you can ask about your point of view. How am I looking at the situation? What am I looking at and how am I seeing it? Is there another reasonable way to look at the situation or is the view only reasonable view? Think through implications. Questions you can ask about implications. If I decide to do X, what things might happen? If I decide not to do X, what things might happen? All right, now we're going to look at chapter 3.
How would you like to collect 5-figure checks by helping foreclosure victims recover monies that are legally owed to them? I'm talking about people who've lost their homes due to falling behind on their property taxes, which is happening more in
Critical Thinking, Chapter 3. Clear Thinking, Critical Thinking, and Clear Writing, Organization and Focus. You can't write well if you are not organized. Your essay should support your position or answer anticipated objections. Organization and focus. Use good examples. Make your point, back it up, give an example, and then move on to your next point. 5 good writing practices. 1. Outlining is important. 2. Revising is very important. 3. Have someone else read your essay and make suggestions. 4. Read your essay out loud. 5. Come back to it later, the principle of focus. Make clear at the outset what issue you intend to address and what your position on the issue will be. The principle of sticking to the issue. All points you make in an essay should be connected to the issue under discussion. The principle of logical sequencing. Make a point before clarifying it and make sure your reader can discern the relationship between any given sentence and your ultimate goal. The principle of completeness. Support fully and adequately whatever position you take on an issue. 5 common problems. 1. Define your terms. Any serious attempt to support or sustain a position requires a clear statement of what is at issue. Sometimes stating what is at issue involves a careful definition of key terms. Types of definitions. 1. Definition by example. 2. Definition by synonym, and 3. Analytical definition. Definition by example. Pointing to, naming, or describing one or more examples of something to which the defined term applies. Example: what I mean by setting a good example is not putting your feet on the table. Definition by example. Examples: happiness is having your own DVD burner. A professional bureaucrat is anyone like our former Governor Davis, who spent a lifetime in the government. Real property: why, your house and land are real property. Definition by synonym. Giving another word or phrase that means the same thing. Examples: poltroonery means the same thing as cowardice. Dacha is another word for Russian country house. Definition by synonym. Examples: hit me means the same as give me another card. Being an octogenarian is being in one's 80s. To fledge an arrow is to fletch or feather it. Analytical definition. Specifying: A. The type of thing the term implies to, and B. The difference between the things the term implies to and other things of the same type. Example: a deciduous tree is a hardwood tree that loses its leaves during the winter. Analytical definition. Examples: widow refers to a woman whose husband has died. Honor means being willing to lay down your life for a just cause. Meat that contains larval worms is said to be measly. 5 common problems. 2. Keep your word choices simple. Good writing is often simple writing. It avoids redundancy, unnecessary complexity, and wordiness. Example: why write armed gunmen? Gunmen are automatically armed. Simple word choices. Example: why write? They express their belief that at that point in time it would accord with their desire not to delay their departure when all that is necessary is they said they wanted to leave. Simple word choices. Because the world is a complicated place, the language we use to describe it often has to be correspondingly complicated. Sometimes it is necessary to be complicated to be clear. But, in general, simplicity is the best policy. 5 common problems. 3. Avoiding ambiguity. A claim is an ambiguous claim if it can be assigned more than one meaning and if the particular meaning it should be assigned is not made clear by context. Avoiding ambiguity. 3. Avoiding ambiguity. A semantic ambiguity is ambiguous due to a particular word or phrase. Examples: she disputed his claim. Did she dispute his statement or his claim to a gold mine? Semantic ambiguity. Example: my brother doesn't use glasses. What does glasses mean? He does not drink out of glasses or he does not have eyeglasses. Avoid ambiguity by substituting an unambiguous word such as eyeglasses for glasses. Sometimes you will need several extra words. 5 common problems. 3. Avoiding ambiguity. B. Syntactic ambiguity is ambiguous because of the structure of the sentence rather than the word or phrases. With semantic ambiguity, the words are not confusing but the word order is. Syntactic ambiguity. Example: he chased the girl in his car. What does this mean? Did he chase a girl already inside his car? Or did he chase a girl, perhaps in another car, with his car? Syntactic ambiguity. Example: there's somebody in the bed next to me. What does this mean? Whose bed? Are you in a dorm room where there are more than one bed and in another bed there is a body, or did you wake up to find someone in your bed? Pronouns. The boys chased the girls, and they giggled a lot. Who giggled? Who does the pronoun they refer to? Avoiding ambiguity. The only way to eliminate syntactic ambiguity is to rewrite the claim. For example, he brushed his teeth on the carpet could be rewritten as he brushed his teeth while standing on the carpet. 5 common problems. 3. Avoiding ambiguity. C. A grouping ambiguity means whenever we refer to a collection of individuals, we must clearly show whether the reference is to the collection as a group or as individuals. Grouping ambiguity. Example: secretaries make more money than physicians. Individually, no; as a group, yes. Whenever we refer to a collection of individuals, we must clearly show whether the reference is to the collection as a group or as individuals. 5 common problems. 3. Avoiding ambiguity. D. The fallacy of composition means that we confuse when something holds true of a group of things individually, then they will automatically hold true of the same things as a group. The fallacy of composition. Example: Sampras and Agassi are the 2 best tennis players in the United States, so they would make the best doubles team. Is this true? Just because they can play best individually does not mean that if you put them together they would be the best couples team. 5 common problems. 3. Avoiding ambiguity. E. The fallacy of division is when a person who thinks that what holds true for a group will necessarily hold true of all the individuals in that group. The fallacy of division. Example: the Eastman School of Music has an outstanding international reputation, therefore, so-and-so, who is on the faculty of Eastman, must have a good reputation. Not true. Just because you go to a good school does not mean that every teacher will be good. Examples of ambiguity: priestess was hooker to jury, AP headline. There will be over 100 consolation prizes worth over $10,000. The girls played with the boys. Why you want sex changes as you age. Analytical definitions. Adult beverage is anything that will get you drunk and make you act like an adolescent. Analytical definitions. Skiing, outdoor fun combined with knocking down trees with your face. Dave Barry. Analytical definitions. Conservative, N. A statesman who is enamored of existing evils, as distinguished from a liberal, who wishes to replace them with others. Ambrose Bierce. 5 common problems. 4. Vague claims can be confused with ambiguous claims, but they are different. Ambiguous claims can mean different things and we are unsure what to pick. Vague claims mean we are unsure of any meaning. Vague claims. Vagueness is not really the problem so much as an undesirable degree of vagueness. Even though a claim may be less precise than it could be, that does not mean it is less precise than it should be. It depends on what you need the information for. Vague claims. Example: if you want to move your car and you ask the ushers how long you have until the play begins, the reply only a minute or 2 is less precise than is possible, but it will work. It means you don't have enough time. But you might want a more precise time if you are the lead actor in the film. Examples of vagueness: men burn off 438 calories per hour gardening. Doctor, the arrhythmia you are experiencing indicates that you should lay off jogging for a while. Your satisfaction is guaranteed with our 2-year limited guarantee. 5 common problems. 5. Making faulty comparisons. This is especially a problem with politicians and advertisers. Think about things like cut by up to half. But how much really? Now 25% larger. Larger than what? Questions for comparisons. Is important information missing? Is the same standard of comparison being used? Are the items comparable? Is the comparison expressed as an average? Averages. Statistics are notoriously slippery, partially because there are 3 different ways of talking about averages: the mean, the median, and the mode. Mean average. The arithmetic mean of a group of numbers is a number that results when their sum is divided by the number of members in the group. Example, the average grade in the class is total of all the grade points divided by the number of people in the class. Median average. In a group of numbers, as many numbers of the group are larger than the median is smaller. Example, the average grade in the class is a halfway grade, which half the class exceeded and half the class fell short of. Mode average. In a group of numbers, the mode is the number occurring most frequently. Example, the average grade in the class is the most common grade given. Writing in a diverse society. Part of what people have to decide when listening to you, or reading your work, is whether or not you are credible. And using poor language lowers your credibility, just as using poor arguments does. Writing in a diverse society. It is important to avoid writing in a manner that reinforces questionable assumptions and attitudes about people. Writing in a diverse society. Thinking critically is about being better able to think in more depth about more complex issues. So much of our stereotypic use of language is a result of lazy thinking and easy cliches. Exercises: a loquacious person is a talkative one. For each of the following, indicate whether the definition given is by example, by synonym, or analytical. A loquacious person is a talkative one. Exercises: a loquacious person is a talkative one, by synonym. For each of the following, indicate whether the definition given is by example, by synonym, or analytical. A loquacious person is a talkative one, by synonym. Exercises. For each of the following, indicate whether the definition given is by example, by synonym, or analytical. A diode is a solid-state electronic device that allows the passage of an electric current in only one direction. Exercises. For each of the following, indicate whether the definition given is by example, by synonym, or analytical. A diode is a solid-state electronic device that allows the passage of an electric current in only one direction. Analytical. Exercises. For each of the following, indicate whether the definition given is by example, by synonym, or analytical. The oud is a stringed musical instrument shaped much like a guitar and played primarily in Middle Eastern countries. Exercises. For each of the following, indicate whether the definition given is by example, by synonym, or analytical. The oud is a stringed musical instrument shaped much like a guitar and played primarily in Middle Eastern countries. Analytical. Exercises. For each of the following, indicate whether the definition given is by example, by synonym, or analytical. Epistemologist means a philosopher or other intellectual who studies the nature of knowledge. Exercises. For each of the following, indicate whether the definition given is by example, by synonym, or analytical. Epistemologist means a philosopher or other intellectual who studies the nature of knowledge. Analytical. Exercises. For each of the following, indicate whether the definition given is by example, by synonym, or analytical. Foppish means sandy. Exercises. For each of the following, indicate whether the definition given is by example, by synonym, or analytical. Foppish means sandy. Synonym. Exercises. Determine which of these claims are best classified as semantically ambiguous, and which of those contain grouping ambiguities, which are syntactically ambiguous, and which are free from ambiguity. Semantic ambiguity is ambiguous due to a particular word or phrase. Exercises. Semantic ambiguity is ambiguous due to a particular word or phrase. Syntactic ambiguity is ambiguous because of the structure of the sentence rather than the word or phrases. With semantic ambiguity, the words are not confusing but the word order is. Exercises. Determine which of these claims are best classified as semantically ambiguous, and which of those contain grouping ambiguities, which are syntactically ambiguous, and which are free from ambiguity. People who go shopping often go broke. Exercises. Determine which of these claims are best classified as semantically ambiguous, and which of those contain grouping ambiguities, which are syntactically ambiguous, and which are free from ambiguity. People who go shopping often go broke. Semantically ambiguous, go broke, and syntactically ambiguous, does often go with shopping or with go broke. Exercises. Determine which of these claims are best classified as semantically ambiguous, and which of those contain grouping ambiguities, which are syntactically ambiguous, and which are free from ambiguity. All snakes are not poisonous. Exercises. Determine which of these claims are best classified as semantically ambiguous, and which of those contain grouping ambiguities, which are syntactically ambiguous, and which are free from ambiguity. All snakes are not poisonous. Syntactically ambiguous. Exercises. Determine which of these claims are best classified as semantically ambiguous, and which of those contain grouping ambiguities, which are syntactically ambiguous, and which are free from ambiguity. He went to the store but was held up in the process. Exercises. Determine which of these claims are best classified as semantically ambiguous, and which of those contain grouping ambiguities, which are syntactically ambiguous, and which are free from ambiguity. He went to the store but was held up in the process. Semantically ambiguous. Exercises. Determine which of these claims are best classified as semantically ambiguous, and which of those contain grouping ambiguities, which are syntactically ambiguous, and which are free from ambiguity. The team was upset. Exercises. Determine which of these claims are best classified as semantically ambiguous, and which of those contain grouping ambiguities, which are syntactically ambiguous, and which are free from ambiguity. The team was upset. Semantical ambiguity on upset and grouping ambiguity on team. Exercises. Determine which of these claims are best classified as semantically ambiguous, and which of those contain grouping ambiguities, which are syntactically ambiguous, and which are free from ambiguity. She watched him dance with intensity. Exercises. Determine which of these claims are best classified as semantically ambiguous, and which of those contain grouping ambiguities, which are syntactically ambiguous, and which are free from ambiguity. She watched him dance with intensity. Syntactically ambiguous. Exercises. Determine which of these claims are best classified as semantically ambiguous, and which of those contain grouping ambiguities, which are syntactically ambiguous, and which are free from ambiguity. San Francisco, AP, a group of citizens angry about the lack of public restrooms downtown is planning a sit-in at City Hall, leaving employees no place to go. Exercises. San Francisco, AP, a group of citizens angry about the lack of public restrooms downtown is planning a sit-in at City Hall, leaving employees no place to go. Semantically and syntactically ambiguous, they work together in this one. Exercises. Determine whether these claims are too vague in the contexts that are stated or implied. During his first news conference of the year, the president said today that his administration was going to crack down even harder on international terrorism. Exercises. Determine whether these claims are too vague in the contexts that are stated or implied. During his first news conference of the year, the president said today that his administration was going to crack down even harder on international terrorism. too vague to be very informative. This speaks as much of an attitude as it does of plans to combat terrorism. Exercises. Determine whether these claims are too vague in the contexts that are stated or implied. Said at a party, "What did I think of the concert? I thought it was pretty good. You should have been there." Exercises. Determine whether these claims are too vague in the contexts that are stated or implied. Said at a party, "What did I think of the concert? I thought it was pretty good. You should have been there." Fine, under the circumstances. Exercises. Determine whether these claims are too vague in the contexts that are stated or implied. My aunt lost most of their possessions when her house burned down last month. Exercises. Determine whether these claims are too vague in the contexts that are stated or implied. My aunt lost most of their possessions when her house burned down last month. Sufficiently precise for most contexts, too vague, of course, if the remark is directed to an insurance claims agent. Exercises. Determine whether these claims are too vague in the contexts that are stated or implied. Well, let's see. To get to the Woodward Mall, go down the street a couple of blocks, and turn right. Go through several stoplights, turn left, and go just a short way. You can't miss it. Exercise is hopelessly vague. Determine whether these claims are too vague in the contexts that are stated or implied. Well, let's see. To get to the Woodward Mall, go down the street a couple of blocks, and turn right. Go through several stoplights, turn left, and go just a short way. You can't miss it. Hopelessly vague. Exercises. Determine whether these claims are too vague in the contexts that are stated or implied. I can't tell you how much I love you. You make me very happy. Exercises. Determine whether these claims are too vague in the contexts that are stated or implied. I can't tell you how much I love you. You make me very happy. Vagueness is not inappropriate here. Exercises. Determine whether these claims are too vague in the contexts that are stated or implied. Property owner, showing this property to guests. The lot extends back to about where that large oak tree stands. Exercises. Determine whether these claims are too vague in the contexts that are stated or implied. Property owner, showing this property to guests. The lot extends back to about where that large oak tree stands. Precise enough. Exercises. Determine whether these claims are too vague in the contexts that are stated or implied. Same property owner, showing this property to a potential buyer. The lot extends back to about where that large oak tree stands. Exercises. Determine whether these claims are too vague in the contexts that are stated or implied. Same property owner, showing this property to a potential buyer. The lot extends back to about where that large oak tree stands. Too vague. Exercises. For each of the following, give an analytical definition that is flattering. Conservative, noun. Exercises. For each of the following, give an analytical definition that is flattering. Conservative, noun, a person whose political views are guided by the wisdom embodied in traditional institutions. Exercises. For each of the following, give an analytical definition that is flattering. Politician. Exercises. For each of the following, give an analytical definition that is flattering. Politician, one dedicated to public benefit through governmental service. Exercises. For each of the following, give an analytical definition that is flattering. Liberal. Exercises. For each of the following, give an analytical definition that is flattering. Liberal, a person whose political philosophy is guided by ideas of democracy, reform, and progress. Exercises. For each of the following, give an analytical definition that is unflattering. Liberal. Exercises. Liberal, a politician who can't keep out of your wallet. For each of the following, give an analytical definition that is unflattering. Liberal, a politician who can't keep out of your wallet. Exercises. Conservative. For each of the following, give an analytical definition that is unflattering. conservative. Exercises. For each of the following, give an analytical definition that is unflattering. Conservative, a politician who dictates to others what they can do in their bedrooms. Exercises. For each of the following, give an analytical definition that is unflattering. Physicians.
All right. So that was some examples of critical thinking. All right, looking at this. Becoming a fair-minded thinker. Weakness versus strong. We talked about that last time. So Socratic thinkers succeed only when they do not come up against what we call strong sense critical thinkers. Strong sense critical thinkers are not easily tricked or slick argumentation. They cannot be stamped or slow to believe, can hold things possible or probable in degrees and without certainty and without pain, can wait for evidence and weigh out evidence, can resist appeals with their deepest prejudice. So they are ones to think things through before making decisions. That's a good quality. We talked about this last time, the traits of a disciplined mind. We talked about the traits of undisciplined mind. Right, so a lot of this is repeating what we just went over last week. I lost my place. We're in chapter 3. There's clear thinking and critical thinking and clear writing. So these girls all look like really good friends. They have matching shirts. This chapter, you're determining acceptable and unacceptable degrees of language. Understand, identify types of ambiguity. Identify problems generally cause language. Use definitions to increase precision and clarity to influence attitudes. Understand the types of definitions, acquire skills for writing effective argument essay. In the media, say what? You don't have to be a national political figure to put your foot down your mouth. Ordinary folks can do it too. President's energy tax won't be noticed. Besides, it will discourage consumption. Hey, if it's noticed, it won't discourage consumption. Females score lower on SAT than males, which right there proves that tests don't show anything. They also demonstrate that teachers do better job of teaching male students, which is just what you're given the sexual bias that exists in the classroom. Okay, so these are all bias statements. If SATs don't show anything, they'll show that teachers do better in job teaching than males. We have to liberate discussion in the campus and not to be restrained by First Amendment. And we can make people free by sticking them in jail. Once your body gets cold, the rest of you gets cold too. On the other hand, if you keep your body warm, the rest of you will stay warm too. It's hard to support the president's invasion of Haiti when American public is so strongly against it. And besides, he's just doing it to raise standings in politics. What's going to raise the standards of public is strongly against it. Has anyone put anything in your baggage without your knowledge? Asked one of the colleagues, Becky White, the airport security employee. Vagueness. Perhaps the most common form of unclear thinking or writing, excessive vagueness. Pursued depth's concept of vagueness can be a naughty one, and it has been a focus of philosophical interest, attention in the past. There's vagueness. Everybody knows these faces. Hilton, Willis, and Without, and Stewart. Ambiguous is when more than one meaning. Does Paul cash a check mean that Paul could somebody cash or somebody give cash to him? Okay, ambiguity. Sometimes when we don't use the correct term, it can be misinterpreted. And that's where we get that's ambiguous. It's easy to interpret different ways. Oh, there goes the time. Well, see everybody next week. Bye now.